Jerry Lewis was a legend, a comedy king, a man who ruled Hollywood with his wild humor, loud voice, and big heart, at least on screen. But off-screen? That's where the story gets messy. Fans adored him, critics praised him, but his personal life was full of drama. He said things that shocked people. He made choices that sparked backlash. And when he passed away in 2017, some secrets stayed buried, until now. After 7 long years of silence, one of his sons is finally speaking out about the kind of father Jerry Lewis was. Join us as we go back through Jerry's life and uncover the truth behind the dad, the icon, and the storm he left behind. From Newark to the stage lights, Jerry Lewis was born on March 16, 1926, in Newark, New Jersey. His real name was Joseph Levitch. His parents were both entertainers. His father, Danny, was a vaudeville performer. His mother, Ray, was a pianist for WOR radio. His family came from Jewish roots, with grandparents from the Russian Empire and Warsaw. Even simple things about his birth, like his name and the hospital he was born in, are unclear. Jerry said his name was Joseph, but official records said Jerome. Some sources say he was born at Clinton Private Hospital. Others say it was Newark Beth Israel. Even family members gave different stories. From the beginning, Jerry's life had mystery all around it. As a teenager, Jerry was known as a prankster. He'd sneak into kitchens and steal pies or fried chicken. School didn't work out for him. He got expelled from one and dropped out of another. He later said he stopped using the names Joseph or Joey because he didn't want to be confused with other performers. At just 15, Jerry created his own act. He lip-synced songs while a record played behind the curtain. He tried performing at a burlesque house, but the show failed. He couldn't get more work and had to take odd jobs. He worked as a soda jerk and as a theater usher. One of the theaters was run by the father of actress Suzanne Plachette. Then things took a turn. A family friend told him to give performing another try. Soon after, a comedian named Irving Kay saw Jerry perform. The audience loved it. Kay became his manager and helped him get booked in the Borscht Belt. During World War II, Jerry was rejected from the military because of a heart condition. But his path to fame was just beginning. Martin and Lewis take over. In 1946, Jerry teamed up with singer Dean Martin. Together, they became one of the most famous comedy duos in history. They called themselves Martin and Lewis. They made people laugh all over the country. Their act included 16 buddy comedy films, a radio series, and live shows. They also starred on TV, especially on the Colgate Comedy Hour. For 10 years, they ruled comedy, but in 1956, they went their separate ways. The breakup was big news. Many fans were upset, but both men kept working in show business. Jerry didn't slow down. He continued acting on his own. Between 1957 and 1984, he made 35 movies. One of his biggest hits was The Nutty Professor, which got great reviews. In 1982, he starred in Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy and got a BAFTA nomination. Jerry also performed with Sammy Davis Jr. from the 1950s through the 1980s. He stayed busy with concerts, TV shows, and audio recordings. He ended up with over 117 film and television credits. Jerry Lewis wasn't just an actor, he was a full-blown entertainment machine. But he wasn't just known for acting. He also made a name as a philanthropist. As the honorary national chairman for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, he hosted the famous Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon. This yearly event raised more than $2.6 billion for the cause. It became a tradition for many American families. People didn't just see him as a funny man, they saw him as someone who cared. That image, however, would later be questioned. Because while Jerry gave to many strangers, his personal life wasn't always so generous. Controversy after death. Jerry Lewis passed away on August 20th, 2017. He was 91 years old. His official cause of death was end-stage cardiac illness and peripheral artery disease. For many, his death marked the end of an era. He had spent decades in the spotlight and had helped raise millions for charity. But soon after he passed, controversy began to rise. At first, people were just remembering the good times, the jokes, the movies, the laughs. But once details about his will came out, everything changed. People expected Jerry Lewis to leave behind a legacy of kindness. He had a big family and a lot of money. But when the contents of his will became public, many were shocked. Fans started questioning who he really was. Why would someone so generous in public make such harsh decisions in private? The discussion about his personal life grew louder. Many began looking back at his behavior and actions while he was alive. Some had already seen signs. Others were now seeing them for the first time. Whatever side people were on, one thing was clear. Jerry Lewis's legacy was no longer just about comedy. His story became more complicated than fans expected. He had spent his life making people laugh, but after his death, people began asking harder questions. And those questions would only grow over time. As more details came out, the image of Jerry Lewis started to shift. The man behind the laughs wasn't always laughing himself, and people wanted to know why. The hidden pain. Behind all the fame and fun, Jerry Lewis lived with real pain. In the 1960s and 1970s, he hurt his back while performing. Doctors gave him medication to help him manage the pain. But that help turned into something worse. Jerry became addicted. He spent over 10 years relying on pain pills. It wasn't something people noticed right away. On camera, he still had energy. On stage, he still made people laugh. But in private, he was fighting a battle that most people didn't see. His addiction wasn't talked about much back then. It was something hidden, especially among celebrities. Jerry didn't want people to know. But the addiction affected everything: his health, his mood, and his relationships. Even his work was impacted at times. The medication helped his pain, but it also controlled his life. He kept going, kept performing, but the struggle didn't go away. He wasn't alone in this battle either. Years later, his son Joseph also dealt with addiction. Some people believe he learned that from watching his father. Others say it runs in the family. Either way, Jerry's story shows that even stars can have deep struggles. Fame can't always cover the cracks. And the more people looked into Jerry's life, the more they saw the truth behind the spotlight. Jerry Lewis's darkest hour. Behind the big laughs and wild faces, Jerry Lewis lived through some of the darkest moments a person can face. During his battle with pain medication, he came close to losing everything, including his life. Addiction can be deadly, and Jerry's story proves it. In 1973, instead of celebrating his 29th wedding anniversary with his first wife, he was in the bathroom holding a weapon. He had been using medication, and with the gun in his mouth, he was prepared to end it all. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, he heard his children laughing in the hallway. That sound stopped him. It brought him back from the edge and saved his life. It's unknown if Jerry ever tried to end his life again, but that moment was as close as he had ever come to leaving everything behind. This brush with death happened during one of the lowest points of his career. He had just made his most controversial movie, The Day the Clown Cried, and the backlash was overwhelming. This film, which focused on the horrors of World War II, never reached the public. Even Jerry himself was uncomfortable with the subject, but he took the project because he thought it would show the reality of war. Instead, it became a burden that weighed on his name and reputation. The laughter of his children may have saved him that night, but the struggles he faced were far from over. Scandal down under. Jerry Lewis's life was full of travel, performances, and hospital visits. But one particular incident from 1999 made headlines for all the wrong reasons. During his Australian tour, Jerry contracted viral meningitis. His shows ended early, and for 5 months, he fought to recover. The Australian hospital staff took care of him during this difficult time. But soon, a different kind of story spread. Jerry hadn't paid his hospital bills. People were shocked. This was Jerry Lewis, a wealthy man who had raised millions for charity, and now he was accused of skipping payment to a hospital. The story hurt his reputation badly. Critics called him selfish and unfair. Jerry, however, said it wasn't his fault. He blamed his insurance company and later sued them for $100 million for damaging his character. This episode showed another side of Jerry's life, the constant battle between his public image and private struggles. It also reminded fans that while he was a legend, he was still human, caught up in problems that could spiral out of control. And it wasn't the only time Jerry found himself under fire for something he said or did. In the years ahead, his mouth would bring him as much trouble as his health. Words that sparked outrage. Jerry Lewis was one of Hollywood's most iconic comedians, but he wasn't always careful with his words. In 1998, he made remarks that shocked many. "I don't like any female comedians," he said, explaining that he had trouble with women doing comedy because he saw them as a producing machine that brings babies in the world. These comments angered a lot of people. Fans who had loved his humor were stunned to hear such a statement from someone they admired. And this wasn't the only group Jerry upset. The LGBTQ community also criticized him for repeatedly using slurs. During his 2007 Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon, Jerry let a derogatory word slip while joking on stage. Although he stopped himself, the damage was done. GLAAD condemned his actions and asked him to meet with members of the community to understand why the word was harmful. Jerry did apologize and said he holds no prejudices in this regard, but a year later, he used the same word again. This made people think he hadn't learned from his mistake. His repeated use of these words stained his image and showed how even a star of his level could be held accountable for his actions. Jerry's remarks revealed a gap between the beloved entertainer on screen and the man speaking behind the microphone. And while his words hurt his reputation, not all of the drama surrounding him was of his own making. Some events were completely out of his control and much more dangerous. A life of fear and early struggles. Not every controversy in Jerry Lewis's life came from something he did. Some of it came from what others did to him. In 2000, he received a chilling letter. It was short, but the threat was clear enough to scare him deeply. Jerry contacted the police immediately. Luckily, the person who wrote the letter had actually signed it, making it easy to track him down. This man had been stalking Jerry for years, going in and out of prison and mental health facilities. The first time he pleaded guilty to stalking Jerry was back in 1995. By 2000, the situation had escalated to direct threats. This showed that even for someone as famous as Jerry Lewis, life could feel unsafe. But looking back, it's clear that Jerry's low moments started long before fame. His childhood, while colorful, was not always happy. Jerry grew up in a performing family. His parents were a double act who sang, danced, played piano, and entertained crowds. This world shaped Jerry into the star he would become. But as a boy, he didn't get to see much of his parents. They were often traveling, leaving him with relatives. He later described himself as feeling a dummy, a misfit, the sorriest kid alive. These early feelings of being left out may have stayed with him for years. Still, Jerry found his passion early. By 15, he was performing his own act, miming songs played off stage. Comedy was what he loved most, and he even gave up school to chase that dream. He only made it to the 10th grade before leaving to perform full-time. But success didn't come right away. His first big break at a burlesque house in Buffalo flopped. The audience wasn't impressed, and Jerry couldn't book more shows for a while. This forced him to wonder if he'd made the right choice. Yet even in failure, Jerry kept going. He had learned early that making people laugh was hard, but it was worth it. The telethon that sparked debate. Jerry Lewis spent decades hosting his famous Labor Day telethons for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. The shows raised millions of dollars and brought worldwide attention to muscular dystrophy. For many families, the event became a yearly tradition. It showed Jerry as a man who cared, not just an entertainer. But while many praised him, not everyone was happy with how the telethons were run. Some of the loudest critics were people living with muscular dystrophy themselves. They felt the telethons inspired audiences to feel pity rather than respect. Instead of empowering those with the condition, they believed the shows made them look weak in the eyes of the public. They also thought the focus on finding a cure ignored the real struggles of daily life. More accessible homes, more jobs, and better support systems were what they wanted most. The criticism became louder over the years, creating a rift between Jerry and some of the very people he was trying to help. He defended the telethons and rejected the negative remarks. Yet in 2011, Jerry parted ways with the MDA. The events went on for a few more years, but without him at the center, they were not the same. Nobody knows for sure why Jerry and the MDA split, but many believe the ongoing criticism played a role. His departure seemed to mark the beginning of the end for the telethons that had defined so much of his public life. But just as his work with the MDA was changing, so too was his career on the big screen. From controversial film to career setback. When Jerry Lewis was at the height of his fame, he was known as a risk-taker. But sometimes risks backfire. His World War II drama, The Day the Clown Cried, is a clear example. The film tackled the horrors of the war in a way that was shocking for the 1970s. Its subject was considered so inappropriate at the time that it was never released. Even Jerry admitted he wasn't comfortable with it, but he took the role because he believed the story needed to be told. Instead of being celebrated for his boldness, the project became one of his lowest moments. After making the film, Jerry stepped back from acting. For almost a decade, he stayed away from the big screen. A huge change for a man who had once dominated Hollywood. When he finally returned in 1980 with the comedy Hardly Working, the reception was harsh. Critics were not kind. Roger Ebert even called it one of the worst movies ever to achieve commercial success. For Jerry, this was a bitter pill to swallow. He had been used to praise, and now he faced public disappointment. These setbacks in his career mirrored the struggles in his personal life, which were becoming harder to ignore. And at the center of his private world was a marriage that would bring both joy and pain. A family built on love and turmoil. Jerry Lewis and his first wife, Patty Palmer, built a large family together. Over 20 years, they had 6 children. Despite the ups and downs, it wasn't all misery. There were happy moments, and Jerry himself once admitted that it was the sound of his children's laughter that stopped him from ending his life in the early 1970s. That moment showed there was at least some love in the family he created. But things weren't perfect. The marriage eventually ended in disaster. Patty did not cite Jerry's treatment of the children as the reason for divorce. Instead, it was his behavior with other women that broke their marriage apart. Jerry's infidelity was no secret. He admitted it openly in interviews and spoke about it with little apology. He was linked to several high-profile women while still married. Among them were Marilyn Monroe and Marlene Dietrich, though neither had a child with him. He also reportedly had a relationship with Susan Minare's mother, bringing another child into the world. These affairs caused major cracks in his marriage and damaged his public image as a family man. Even though Jerry was proud of his work and his role as an entertainer, his private life showed a man struggling to live up to his public persona. And as his personal choices became more widely known, people began to question what kind of legacy he would leave behind. You see, most stars dream of leaving a clear legacy behind when they pass away. They want their names to mean something. With Jerry Lewis, that legacy is complicated. On one hand, he transformed comedy. His films inspired countless performers. He raised extraordinary amounts of money for muscular dystrophy and brought worldwide attention to the cause. On paper, those achievements should make him a Hollywood legend without question. But on the other hand, he was also one of the most controversial figures of his time. His remarks about women comedians and his repeated use of slurs at public events left deep marks on his reputation. Even his will became a point of controversy, seeming to confirm accusations made by his sons about the kind of man he was at home. A funeral that revealed a family divide. When Jerry Lewis passed away, his funeral should have been a time for family to come together. It was a chance for loved ones to say goodbye for the last time, and for fans to mourn from afar. But like much of Jerry's life, even his funeral had drama. Only a few family members attended. His second wife, Sandy Pitnick, was there, along with their adopted daughter, Danielle. Also in attendance were two of his sons, Christopher and Scott, from his first marriage. But what stood out most was who wasn't there. Jerry had 6 sons with his first wife, Patty Palmer. One had already passed away, but the other 3 simply refused to attend. They stayed away even at this final goodbye. This absence spoke volumes. A funeral is often a place where grudges are put aside, at least for one day. But for Jerry's family, the divide was too deep. The wounds ran back decades, and the damage showed in the empty seats that day. And this divide became even clearer when Jerry's will went public. A will that shocked his sons. A funeral can sometimes heal old wounds, but Jerry's will only made them worse. When the document became public, it revealed just how far the rift between Jerry and his sons had gone. Normally, people expect an estate to be divided among children. Even if there's been tension, parents often leave something behind. But Jerry's will said something else entirely. At the time of his death, Jerry Lewis's net worth was around $50 million. He could easily have split it among his kids, leaving each with a decent share. Instead, he wrote in his will that he intentionally excluded all the children from his first marriage. Not only them, but also their descendants, any grandchildren. He gave no reason. The statement was cold and final. It made clear that whatever had happened between Jerry and his sons, he didn't want them to benefit from his fortune. This wasn't a simple oversight. It was deliberate. And while the will excluded them, it also revealed who Jerry chose to take care of. Everything went to his second wife, Sandy, and their adopted daughter, Danielle. This made it obvious where his loyalties lay at the end of his life. And it left many asking, how did it come to this? What could turn a father and his sons so completely against one another? A childhood of uncertainty and fear. The tension between Jerry and his sons didn't appear overnight. According to his children, it had been there since they were young. One of his sons, Anthony Lewis, painted a vivid picture of what life was like growing up in the Lewis household. He said, "You never knew which Jerry Lewis would be coming home at night. Some days, he'd be cheerful and full of jokes from his day job. Other days, he could be cranky, rude, or downright bitter. When he would show up and park right in front of the big front door, my mom would get on the intercom and say, 'Your father is home.' We scattered. We could never predict his behavior on a given day," Anthony recalled. That sense of unpredictability made the children anxious. They reportedly scattered just to avoid their father's temper. Anthony also revealed that Jerry beat him with a belt on 2 occasions, but said it was the emotional abuse that stayed with him the most. He was emotionally abusive every day, he claimed. This wasn't the image fans saw. They saw Jerry on stage, making the world laugh. But behind the closed doors of their Bel Air mansion, Anthony said the reality was very different. The family lived in what he described as the highest echelon of Hollywood, the absolute highest. "My father was the top box office draw on planet Earth, yet even surrounded by luxury, the children felt afraid." This fear and emotional strain didn't go away when they grew up. It followed them into adulthood, shaping their choices and their relationships. And for some, it led to tragedy, addiction, estrangement, and loss. The pain from childhood didn't just disappear when Jerry's sons became adults. Some sought therapy to deal with the scars. Others turned to more dangerous ways of coping. One of Jerry's sons, Joseph, struggled with substance addiction for years. It controlled his life until 2009, when he reportedly took too much and passed away. By then, Joseph hadn't seen his father in decades. The distance between them was so deep that when Joseph died, Jerry apparently didn't help with the funeral costs, even though he could easily afford it. For Joseph's brothers, this was unforgivable. Gary Lewis publicly blamed their father, calling him a mean and evil person who could have saved Joseph if they had been on better terms. He said Jerry doesn't really care, and that his brother partly died from a broken heart. But Jerry's own words tell another side. In a 2014 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he admitted he was devastated by Joseph's death. He said it was unfair for his son to go the way he did, and that he beat himself up constantly over it. His wife reportedly had to console him and tell him it wasn't his fault. This contrast between what his son said and what Jerry said shows how complicated their relationship really was. The family wasn't just divided by money or fame, it was divided by years of hurt, silence, and miscommunication. And while Joseph's story is tragic, it's not the only controversy that shaped Jerry's reputation as a father. Susan Minaret and the unanswered questions. Jerry Lewis wasn't only surrounded by controversy with his sons. Another figure, Susan Minaret, has also become part of his story. Susan claims to be Jerry's biological daughter, the product of a 3-year affair he allegedly had with her mother. While Jerry was alive, Susan spent years trying to get him to acknowledge her. She says she spent time with him as a child and that he was affectionate then, but she never knew he was her father until she was in her 20s. By that point, Jerry reportedly didn't want the world to know she existed. Even when Susan sustained brain damage in a car accident and became homeless, Jerry never publicly acknowledged her as his daughter. In 2009, a DNA test suggested there was an 88.7% chance that Susan and Gary Lewis share the same father. Still, Jerry wouldn't recognize her. When he died, she was left out of the will, just like his sons. Susan's story adds yet another layer to Jerry Lewis's complicated family life. Here was a man who, to the public, seemed larger than life, a comedian, a philanthropist, a Hollywood legend. But behind that image were broken relationships, unanswered questions, and people who felt rejected. Even Jerry's last interviews hinted at this divide. One of them went viral because of his sharp, almost rude responses to questions about his life. It wasn't his most gracious moment, and it showed how, even at the end, he was still a man surrounded by tension and controversy. Do you think Jerry Lewis' troubled relationships with his family change how people should remember him today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.